All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, we all know that the Philadelphia 76ers were going to be fighting an uphill battle in their Eastern Conference semifinal series against the Miami Heat, being that the Sixers don't have the services currently of all-star center Joel Embiid, who has been out after he suffered that injury towards the end of the series in the first round against the Toronto Raptors. But now for Philadelphia, they find themselves in an even tougher situation. Philadelphia dropped the first two games of this series in Miami as the defense of the Heat reigned supreme. And the absence of Embiid has once again put all-star guard James Harden in the spotlight. Now, in two games for this series, so far, Harden is averaging 18 points per contest as a combination of the Heat's stifling defense, along with Harden's knack for disappearing in those crucial moments in the postseason, have once again put him on center stage for playoff disappointment. Now, Harden has been a non factor in the second half of both of the contests so far in this series. And in the second half, that's when the Sixers needed him most. And unfortunately, he has been unable to deliver. Now, we've seen this before from Hart. Make no mistake about it, whether it was during his time with the Oklahoma City Thunder, with the Houston Rockets, or of course, most recently with the Brooklyn Nets. As you know, he simply has a knack for not coming through in the postseason. And now, unfortunately, for the folks on Broad Street, they're getting a front row seat in regards to his playoff disappearing act. Now, this is why I initially reserved judgment on Harden's trade to the Sixers from the Nets earlier this season because I said at the time that at some point Philly was going to need him to win a game for them, and then the true James Harden would come out. We didn't have to worry about it during the regular season because coming down the stretch run, for the most part, he was quote unquote getting a feel for his new teammates, for the new organization, you name it. But when Joel Embiid was injured, I said, you know what? This is it. And regardless if Joel Embiid was healthy or not at this point, I said that at some point during this postseason run, James Harden was going to have to win a game or two for Philly. And that got sped up, obviously, with the Embiid injury. And now we are seeing once again that Harden, he simply can't get it done. But for me, it's one of those where I think one of the saving graces for him so far has been that, the first two games of the series were on the road. But, we're looking ahead to game three tomorrow night at the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia. And if Harden does what Harden has been known to do in the postseason, he's going to hear it, and he's going to hear it like he's never heard it before because the fans in Oklahoma City, they really support their team. Same can be said about the folks in Houston. With Brooklyn last year, it was kind of up and down. But the Philadelphia sports fan, regardless if it's the Phillies, the Eagles, the Flyers, or the Sixers, they are very passionate, fan base. Not to take anything away from any other place that Harden's played for, but nonetheless, Philadelphia is a very tough sports town, and they're going to tell you how it is, whether you want to hear it or not. So for James Harden walking into that arena, if he doesn't come and deliver it, all I got to say is he's going to have to deal with the most criticism that he's probably ever had to deal with in his NBA career, and that's saying a lot. But nonetheless, the folks in Philly definitely will let him hear it. As if he doesn't come through, he's more than likely going to be public enemy number one in the city of brotherly love. Now, the status for Game Three for Joel Embiid is still up in the air following that injury, and rightfully so. Dealing with a concussion, he's probably gonna have to wear a face pad or face shield rather when he comes back. And even when MB comes back, he's not gonna be a full 100% Joel Embiid. He's gonna be a portion of that. So maybe if Philly can get 75% out of him, they'll be lucky. But nonetheless, is he gonna have a series to come back for? Because the way that Miami is looking defensively right now, this series could be over in 4 or 5 games. And if you're the Sixers, This is what you got James Harden for, to come here in the postseason and deliver. But right on cue, he's letting them down. And of course, to me, I said it when it happened. This falls in the lap of Daryl Morey, who's running the front office now in Philly, because I don't know why he had to go out there and try to get James Harden to play alongside Joel Embiid and make that trade with the Nets. I felt like there were better trades for the 76ers to have out there when they wanted to deal Ben Simmons that didn't involve James Harden. It was all about finding the right pieces to go alongside Joel Embiid and go alongside the players that you previously had on this team, you currently have on this team. And I just don't think that an ISO player like James Harden, for the most part, fits that. And of course, if Philly does not get it done, then of course another scapegoat is going to be Doc Rivers. And of course, Doc Rivers has had his fair share of playoff disappointments since the Celtics won that championship when he was the head coach in 2008. So you look at it right now, and you have a ticking time bomb, as far as I'm concerned, in Philadelphia with this team. And I said it before, and I'll say it again. I didn't say it in a podcast, but nonetheless, cue the Spider-Man meme. And I say that because you look at it, and I question it from the jump. Trading Ben Simmons for the most part for Joel and I mean not me for no, not for Joel Embiid, for James Harden, because the thing is I basically said it. You had two divas, and you were exchanging two divas, and of course, the Nets didn't really benefit from anything from Ben Simmons this season. Obviously, he didn't play, and of course, they got swept in the first round by the Boston Celtics, and we don't know what could have been. And on the flip side for Philly, it just seemed like they just wanted to get rid of James Harden. Stephen A, how are you doing out there? Thank you for chiming in. I love the Mets jerseys in the background. I'm always a fan of jerseys, as you can see. Stephen A says, I feel the same, that the Sixers are done, and I'm a diehard Brooklyn Nets fan. Listen, the thing is, Stephen A, you can definitely agree with me. I'm sure Nets fans were more than happy to see James Harden go, because for me, I think in just watching James Harden play last year with the Nets and even this year, his heart was never in it, plain and simple. And I think at first he wanted to play with KD again, but he definitely didn't want to play with Kyrie. And the thing was, I knew it wasn't going to work as far as a championship level with the three of them, because you had three ISO guys, and who was going to check their ego in order to take that back seat in order to make that work, and none of them were willing to do that, and that is why you know the Nets ended up where they were last year, and that's why the Nets ended up where they were this year. You got to check your egos in situations like that, and I think with James Harden, he's one of those guys that, unfortunately, he's getting older, and the things that he's leaned on for so long, his skill set is not what it was. And I think the league has caught up to him a lot. They're not calling fouls like they did before. But the bottom line is, if you want to be a superstar player, you have to come through and deliver in those clutch moments. And let's be realistic. James Harden has played his fair share of playoff games, whether it was OKC, Houston, the Nets, and now Philly. Those clutch moments in the postseason for him, they're few and far between. And that's where the great players are always remembered in sports, not just the NBA, MLB, the NHL, NFL, you name it. The great players are always remembered for what they do in those clutch moments in the postseason. And James Harden's only known for disappointing and coming up short. And I'm sure, like, listen, I know like some Net fans personally, and I'm sure that they, like you, Stephen A, you're not the only one, that they were more than happy to see him go, because the bottom line is he tuned out in Brooklyn the same way that he tuned out towards the end of his Rockets career. And I've had this conversation with some great friends of mine, not on social media, but the thing is, when he was with the Rockets, talking about James Harden, what more could that organization have given him in order to succeed? They put so many quality players around him, so many quality coaches, basically made a system for him, and he still could not get it done. Now, I'm reading what Stephen A is saying right here. I feel like my New York Brooklyn Nets, need to discipline Kyrie and Kevin, of course, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, because those players cannot run the asylum. Totally agree. And I talked about this last week when the Nets were eliminated in the first round of the playoffs by the Celtics. And, that goes back to, Kyrie's comments before we didn't need a head coach, and it showed. And, I've talked about, Steve Nash is not the head coach for that team. Changes need to be made. But nonetheless, they're on a fast track to nowhere as well. And I think what went on with the Nets and what continues to go on with the Nets and what's going on with the Sixers with James Harden right now, it needs to be a wake up call for a lot of these players and a lot of these teams in the NBA. You can't have these me type guys leading your organization, quote unquote, on the court or being like the focal points of your basketball team if you expect to win, because it's all about the team. You have to play team ball if you're going to win, and I think that's something that James Harden has never grasped. I think, and because of that, I don't think he's ever really truly accepted that leadership role and responsibility role, and that's why his act has worn out in so many different places. And the thing is, his act is going to wear out in Philly quicker than any place else. Because the thing is, it's like Stephen A. I mean, you're a Nets fan. I assume that you live in the New York City area, so you know the close proximity between New York City and Philadelphia. You know how the fans are down there. And I mean, if people think New York fans are rabid about their teams, it's a different beast in Philadelphia when it comes to things. So I look at it right now with even with a healthy MB coming back potentially, he's not going to be fully healthy. And for me, even if he was at this point, you're asking him to go out there and help you beat a Miami Heat team that is so good defensively. They don't have their full squad yet because they didn't have Kyle Lowry in game two. But to go out there and beat this team in 4 out of the next 5 games is going to be extremely difficult. So, with that said, for Philly at this point, if they get one game, I'm going to be surprised. And let me rephrase that. Not say surprised, but I think that would be it. I don't see them getting more than one game at this point. Could be wrong, obviously, but the thing is, I simply don't see it because for the rest of the series, I don't see Embiid being healthy. Uh, but nonetheless, it's just not happening. And Stephen A. he chimes in again. He says, "I don't think Kevin Durant is a selfish player like Kyrie." They both have it. I just think Kyrie is on a total different level, and I think a lot of that was just KD's ego as well. They both have big egos. But I think for Kyrie, what can you say? It ain't working out there. But nonetheless, with James Harden, he's another selfish player, and honestly, he's getting towards the end of the line with his NBA career. He's had all of the individual accolades, MVP, scoring title. For He was a member of the NBA 75th anniversary team. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. All of those accolades are there. But at this point of his career, it's looking less and less like he's ever going to be able to hoist that Larry O'Brien trophy and call himself an NBA champion. It's sad because the talent is there, the potential is there, but the bottom line is it just ain't getting done. And now I think this is going to be the biggest reality check for him because, like I said, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, fans in Philadelphia are very, very passionate about their teams, and they will let you hear it. The fans let Ben Simmons hear it in game 7 last year against the Hawks. And that was a guy who they saw the Sixers draft and build to that point. And when you come in as a star with the type of money and type of accolades that James Harden has, and you don't get it done, you are going to hear it in that town. So for James Harden, if it's either put up or shut up time, and if he don't put up, he's going to hope that the fans in Philly shut up, which they definitely won't do. So folks, that is going to wrap it up. I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Much love to Stephen A for, dropping some dimes in the chat box. I definitely appreciate it. You're repping NYC, you're repping Queens. I did not see the final score of the Mets game tonight. I know it was 7-4 in favor of the Phillies. going in like I think in the top of the ninth at some point. So obviously, you're probably watching it, and I'll check it out in a minute. But nonetheless, that is a big series this weekend in the National League East. Oh, really? The Mets did come back. Okay, so Buck, some more of that Buck magic on the Buck Showalter is reigning supreme, and there's going to be plenty to talk about with them this week. They also split a series with the Braves at City Field, which is big for them, even though it's still early in the season. But nonetheless, I've been talking about the Mets, and I definitely will be continue to talk about the Mets during the baseball season. Also, folks, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 pounds of sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. Also, if you like what you heard and saw tonight, please feel free to like and subscribe. The more likes and subscriptions, the merrier. That's the bottom line. So once again, thank you to Stephen A for chiming in the chat box. Truly appreciate it. That you continue to check this out, and I hope to have you back on here real soon. Just chiming in because I really appreciate the feedback that you were giving me. I really appreciate. Obviously, I don't know you personally, but I could definitely appreciate, feel, and understand your passion for your teams and for like sports in general. So I definitely hope to that you continue to check this out. And with that said, I'm William Martin signing off. And thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube.